Okay, got it. Recording in progress. Hello, everyone. Really pleased to welcome everyone to our project launch for MEDAL. I'm Virve Wieman. I'm the Associate Professor of Psycholinguistics at the University of Tartu in Estonia. I'll say first of all that there is international sign interpretation. I hope those of you who want to use this have access to it. There's also closed captioning enabled, so you can turn that on or off on your own Zoom windows. So today we're going to introduce our new consortium project, MEDAL, that is funded by the European Commission twinning scheme. And for those of you who don't know what twinning is, it's basically a networking a scheme to fund the development of networks, specifically with one at least one partner in the what are known as widening countries, and others that are top class leading European research institutions in Europe. And the idea is partly to address the imbalance in access to funding and resources and visibility, and through this kind of consortium to develop expertise, training, knowledge transfer, and so on. It also a new feature is that it has a research component in it. I mean, an actual thing for research, which is wonderful. So our consortium addresses this balance by a whole host of planned activities for training and research. And we also address the fact that linguistics has changed a lot in the last several decades, and has become, I guess, is still changing, of course, but it has become a much more empirical science, there's been a real quantitative turn. And because of that, the importance of training and methods and in the kinds of methods that are used, and that's become much more central to the way linguistics is done, the way training needs to happen, and also not only means there's a difference in different regions in terms of accessibility, but also in terms of generations and what type of training has been part of the development of a linguist. So, and in addition, that brings an interdisciplinarity. So I think we've got all those components, and that's why we decided to write this project around building methodological excellence, and specifically focusing on methods. So, so our consortium is led by us here in Tartu in Estonia, and our partners are in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, the Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics and Radboud University, and the University of Birmingham in the UK. Here's a picture of the people who are the core groups that are directly involved with the project at each of the institutions, and we'll be introducing each of the members, the partners, the partner institutes a little bit later on. So I'm not going to name everyone right now, but the focus of the consortium is three sort of general bundles of methods. So the first year, that's now 2023, is focused on corpus linguistics, the second year on experimental approaches, and the third year on computational models of language and learning. And we have, so those are associated with each year, and running through all the years is a host of activities involving training of researchers, involving mobility furthering collaboration between the institutions that are involved, and with the aim of developing sustainable collaboration and also a stronger, even stronger research hub of excellence in linguistics in Tartu. So what we have planned for today is first of all 3 short talks demonstrating, sort of exemplifying exciting new directions in each of these sub topics. And I think that's what'll interest anyone who's in the audience today is the academic talks. And then following those 3 talks, we'll be talking much specifically about the activities that we're actually planning and the types of events that we'll be hosting with METAL. So each of the talks hopefully will have a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers. When we talk about the METAL activities, each of the partners will be introducing ourselves, talking about the activities that are planned, and we'll have questions and answers at the end of that thing. For those of you who are here for the academic talks, you're free to leave after that. For the rest of you, there's going to be more details available after the talks. And the event is being recorded so that everybody knows. I'll say again, there's sign language and international sign interpretation. So without further ado, our first speaker is Peter Uhrig, who is Junior Research Group Leader at the Center for Scalable Data Analytics and Artificial Intelligence at the Technical University of Dresden. And Peter worked as a research scientist in the multimodal language department at the Max Planck Institute, one of our consortium partners in Nijmegen, until just now in January. And his talk is, sorry, I'll stop sharing my slides. Peter's talk is entitled Multimodal Corpus Linguistics. So I will close my microphone and pass the floor to Peter.
Right, thank you very much. My understanding today was to just give a brief overview of corpus linguistic methods here. Now, it turns out that all members seem to be corpus linguistic expert centers, which I wasn't quite aware of, but I will still, my understanding was I should present what corpus linguistics is in general. So we're going to talk mainly about NewScape and the distributed literate hen lab and the data set that are produced out of that. So what we have, the data set that I'm going to show you in a minute, and I'm going to give you a live demo on how to use that, is the UCLA Library Broadcast NewScape. This is originally an archive which started in 1973 with the Watergate hearings. So they have a long history of recordings, recording major US television news plus the local Los Angeles market. And they transitioned to computer recordings between 2005 and 2006. And that is basically when the data set that I'm using starts. So I'm currently not using anything that is older than that, although there's a project underway to to digitize the old recordings. They extended this to international data from 2012. So there are recording stations in various places of the world and recording some data there. Why are they even allowed to do that? Well, because like in Germany, they would lock me up probably if I tried that. The reason is there's an exemption that is called Section 108 of the US Copyright Act. And it says an archive is allowed to record television news and lend out copies. Now, lending out copies, you may understand how old that is now. This hasn't been ever tried in court, but several archives are doing this thing now, including archive.org. And there seems to be a general consensus that making available short snippets openly is okay, like up to 60 seconds, and anything longer only for members who are sort of who have an account. Now, currently NewScape records roughly 150 shows a day, about 120 of which are in English, mostly US American. And they have annotation on multiple levels that is applied directly after recording. So there's part of speech tagging, that's some shallow parsing and a few other tools there. But much of that has problems that makes it difficult for corpus linguists to use. And the whole thing is the basis of much of the research done by the Distributed Literature 10 Lab, which is a collaborative of people working on multimodal communication, and I'm part of that. Now, just to give you an overview, these are old figures already, but you see that the absolute vast majority of the data, over 400,000 hours to roughly 2 years ago, and 3 billion words, is American English. And then you get like 22,000 hours Spanish and 14,000 hours French, but not subtitles everywhere in French, and then international English. And you see it goes down to Arabic, where we have like 500 hours, and those without captions and things like that. So it's a bit of a heterogeneous collection. I study English linguistics, so I'm mainly working on the English data here. And now I would like to show you, so I spare you all the details, how I processed this, because that is a longer talk. Ask me if you want. The question is, how do we actually use this in existing tools? Now, many of you may be familiar with CQP Web as an interface. If you aren't, well, you've probably seen Corpus managers before. So let's start with a very simple example. You type in the word data, and it will give you all the instances of data in a keyword and context setup. You can then click here for more context. You can click here for metadata, like what shows that and when was it recorded. And of course, you can sort in various ways. That's all old news. But the interesting thing here is we're doing this on the subtitles that were broadcast with these TV shows. So nobody transcribed that manually on our end. It's all data that was directly taken out of the TV shows. Now, of course, this has annotations. So you can say, hey, only give me like surprise as a noun and not as a verb. And then you can ask the computer to find this for you. And then you see that it tries to, it's actually quite good at doing that. All right, now that's straightforward. The interesting part comes that now we actually have added, so let's do a slightly more complex pattern, all the way from one word, another optional word, and then a preposition. This is from Elisabeth Sima's paper, all the way from X prep Y. And she looked at that multimodally in the collection originally to see what kind of gestures do we see. And it turns out this particular construction has loads and loads of gestures, like 80–90%, I can't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere around there, that this is accompanied by gestures. And now the thing is, we now have this little TV icon that we put there. We click on that and it will jump roughly 2 seconds to before this is being uttered. And then and then it will go on to the next line, and so on. So let's just look at that.
More than a dozen mayhem in shopping malls, if you
will. Do you actually get audio on this?
To Colorado to Connecticut. We're all breaking out.
That are driving on Interstate 10, very foggy. We have poor visibility all the way from Texas to Florida.
So here you see the pointing. If you go back to the previous one,
more than a dozen mayhem in shopping malls, if you will, all the way from New York to Colorado to Connecticut. We're all breaking out.
So quite beautiful examples.
Driving on Interstate 10.
You can go through these all together.
Warmth. We had so
there's like, this is another one.
I would want to be that dude to be like, yeah, we did it all the way from LA to Cancun. No, I'm just
okay. So that is relatively nice, because compared to tools such as Youglish or similar, we actually have the full linguistic annotations. We can run linguistic queries here, looking for parts of speech, looking for syntactic structure. So this is dependency annotated, and basically it is cleaned data. Now there's one more thing here, and I will just randomly take this one here. So this shows how this works all together. So you can combine that in a more complex syntax by saying, hey, give me the word data. And then it should be a direct object. That's this little section that does that. Don't worry about it now. And then you can say, hey, we also ran computer vision on this. So the computer vision system should have said there's a person on screen, and it should have said the hands are moving. Now, basically, with this tool, you can combine these various levels of annotation as long as you explicitly put them into the corpus, which we did. Now, this is not that reliable in this particular version. This is an old version of software that we used here. We have now rerun the data through something else, but we're still working on cleaning it. So if you look at that again,
make sure that we're protecting the reliability of the grid and our customers'
Come on,
data.
computer, what did you see there?
And when we found this,
so that didn't work out at all.
Mark and Panera round out the top 5. The app analyzed data from 1.5 million
And you
users
see,
across the country.
so this, of course, depends a lot on the computer vision system that you're using. Now, we can't necessarily rely on computer vision alone. We probably want to do our own analyses. And to do so, you can go through this and have your own spreadsheet, but that's getting very tedious very soon. So we have another tool for that, and we have a download button here. So let's say we take this query here with 1100 items. We click download. And then there's this new button here that says download for Rapid Annotator. And so let's just save that here and move over to the Rapid Annotator, which is a tool that we created with the help of Google Summer of Code students to annotate large amounts of data snippets rapidly. So we created a new experiment here, data tests, and whatever as a description, doesn't matter. We leave everything as default. And now let's see whether the download has finished. Yes. So we choose a concordance here. Sorry.
Peter, I'm going to interrupt you to tell you that you only have a few more minutes.
That's
left.
Perfect. I think I need about 2. Okay, thank you. I maybe should have used something with slightly fewer results, but doesn't matter. So it's uploaded now. And now you can go and change settings. So you can add people to be annotators, like if you have student researchers or colleagues you collaborate with. So I'm just going to add myself here. And I leave the default settings 2 seconds before, 2 seconds after. And then I need to set up questions. I can do that manually by saying, okay, I want to have an annotation. Sorry, cancel. Want to have an annotation level. So let's just import this random one here. No, that's the one I just made it. Sorry, import existing levels. That's them. Let's take this one here. So what you have here is basically you set up questions and answers that your annotators should reply with. So is that metaphorical? Well, literal, undecided, metaphorical, and so on. If it is if there's problem or repetition, you skip. And you set this up with a simple interface. So I'm speeding this up now. So let me go to here. The data test experiment now shows up. And what happens is that it will preload the videos in the background
of the grid. And
so this is the video again that we saw.
And when we
just pause that for a minute, it will loop forever in these 4-second snippets that we set. And then I just hit a key or hit a button here. So I say this is literal and there's a no gesture, and then immediately the next video starts. And so you can go through an awful lot of videos in a very, very short period of time. And once you're done, well, here you see the progress. We're not very far along. The owner of the experiment can view the results and can download the results as an Excel or CSV file for further analysis in R. So that was the brief overview. So to conclude, why would you want to use this sort of thing? Well, of course, and now I'm preaching, that's why I said I'm preaching to the converted. Everybody here seems to understand we need corpus, so no data collection once the corpus is there. Large data sets allow for the study of phenomena that are less frequent. It's relatively naturalistic compared to many experimental situations or setups, but it can be used for hypothesis generation for experimental research, where you say, hey, this looks like there's a pattern. Let's test this experimentally. It's comparably fast, and anyone with a web browser can do it. And that is, I think, also something very important that we can train people to do this very quickly. This means students can actually do their own projects with this kind of workflow, and you don't need to spend lots on specialized training. In the long run, we're going to use machine learning applications to find out all these things and combine these various levels. And we're only getting started. And I'm looking forward to hearing your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that rapid fire overview of where this kind of research is. I see a lot of clapping hands. I don't immediately see any raised hands. So I will, and we don't really have much time for questions. I will just ask you one question about what you see the place of the place sort of. My understanding is that gesture research with multimodal corpora is kind of in its very early stages. Is that right? Or where do you see its sort of position?
Yeah, I mean, depends on what. I think gesture research with multimodal corpora exists on the kind of level that you just saw, where people actually go in and look for, say, lexical elements they're interested in and see what kind of gestures co-occur. The difficulty here is actually, and that's where we really are in the infancy, is can you specify gestures and say what words do co-occur with that? Can you specify form features of gestures and extract these automatically? Things like that is where our current research is actually going to learn more about these things.
And I think that's what it feels most exciting for linguistics overall, at least from my perspective. Thank you very much. We're going to immediately go.
Yeah. Sorry for taking so long. Take care.
No, thank you. So we're going to move to Yayun Zhang, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics, our partner in Nijmegen. And she will be talking about using head-mounted eye tracking to study early word learning in naturalistic contexts.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I'm trying to share my slides. I think okay, do you see?
We see your screen now.
Okay, but not the...
Not the slides.
Yeah, okay, so 1 second. Okay, trying to share my slide screen. Is this the... Do you see the screen with my slides on it?
No, and this worked perfectly when we tried it out before. Oh, yes, that was your slides.
Yeah, okay. Do you see, not the presenter view, but the actual?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks for the nice introduction. So today I'm going to talk about one behavioral experimental method on head-mounted eye tracking. So I just want to quickly mention that, so part of this work, it's my thesis work when I was a graduate student at Indiana University, working with Dr. Chen Yu and his amazing team who spent decades working on developing this head-mounted method with children. So my talk is going to focus on our early language development, early language learning, but I think this method is very useful in general for people who are interested in study naturalistic input. Okay, so I want to start off with William James' famous quote. So babies' first experience of the world is one great booming, fuzzing confusion. So their early environment contains a lot of objects, happenings, and properties. So how do children learn from the noisy real world? So recently, advances in wearable sensors provide researchers with the means to capture the learning environment. So for example, researchers started to put mini cameras mounted on the infant's head to record visual information perceived from the infant's perspective and then freely explore their environment. So these new methods have documented unique properties of learning input from the infant's view. So today I want to focus on one such way that captures naturalistic input, which is head-mounted eye tracking. So head-mounted eye tracking works by having participants wear headgears with an eye camera that points in and records eye movement, and a scene camera that points out that records what in front of the observer from moment to moment as they move their head. So eye movement from eye cameras are mapped to the scene camera to determine where the observer is looking within this scene video. So, okay, so this method is really allow us to quantify naturalistic learning input at the fine-grained sensory motor level, which is really important because we can't really obtain a complete understanding of learning mechanism without knowing what data the learning system operates on. And data matter to learning are jointly created by parents and children in everyday social interactions. So using this method, we conducted a study that investigated how children learn on word-object mappings in naturalistic book reading context. So we chose book reading because shared book reading is one of the most common daily activities for really young children, and has been found to lead to many developmental outcomes such as reading, literacy, and academic performance, and has been considered a critical training ground for language learning. So this is what our setup looks like. So parents and children and infants sat next to each other at a small desk, and both participants wear the head-mounted eye tracking gear that I just mentioned. And each eye tracking system includes a scene camera, capture the first-person view from the participant's perspective, and an infrared camera mounted on the head, point to the eye and record the eye image right here. So the purple crosshair indicated here means that indicate gaze directions in the first person view. And we also have two third person view and one bird's eye view that capture the interaction from a third person perspective so that we can code other behaviors such as gesture. So using this paradigm, we collected data from 14 participants. They're all between the age of 18 to 19-month-old. So we invited them to the lab and provided them with 5 wordless storybooks to read. So we put books that do not have many text because we want parents to generate the labeling sentences on their own rather than reading off the text. So the instruction is really simple. So just pick several books to read to their child for 15 minutes. No need to follow any particular order or finish all of them. So just read at your own pace as you naturally would at home. So each dyad reads about 2 to 5 books. In total, we collected 45 reading sessions from 14 dyads. So here I want to show you a short video of one of our book reading session from an 18-month-old boy using this dual tracking system. So video from the left is from the child, and video on the right is from the parent. So these videos are synchronized, showing where the 2 agents are looking in real time.
This little boy, he's got all dressed up. Where do you think he's going? This is like you. Who is he petting? A dog. Not a dog. What kind of animals do we have at home? Kitties, yeah. He's got his kitty and a little boy. They're going for a walk. Where do you think they're going? Well, then you skipped a page. Look at this page. It's going to make you happy. What kind of animal is that? A horse. What is he doing to the horse?
So as you can see here, it's a very rich linguistic environment and a lot of social interactions going on. So to quantify our video data, we manually annotated 5 variables listed here. So child and parent gaze, so meaning where the child and parent was looking during the book reading, child and parent gesture, and parent speech. And we also coded objects that are printed on the page. So in this visualization, all coded variables were represented as n categorical temporal data streams with different color indicate a different region of interest in each moment. So as you can see here, page 1 had 4 different objects corresponding to the color coding scheme here, and then parent named one of them, which is the boy, and then parent also pointed to the boy, and then child did not produce any gesture, and then these are moment by moment looking behavior. So as you can see already from the first page, we can see a lot of interesting dynamics here. Like, for example, parent first look at it and then provided a gesture and then labeled it, and then child also joined the parent's attention in looking at the labeled object. So, so using the same coding scheme, we coded information on every page and so on and so forth. The way the data is coded is really flexible and allow us to explore many, many interesting questions. So for the interest of time, I want to really highlight one set of results that I think is really interesting. So as you saw from the video, parents are not just labeling objects, they also provide many social cues such as gesture. So one question that we're interested in is how parents and children's gesture help infants follow and direct their attention to identify the correct object naming, correct object mapping in naming moments during naturalistic storybook reading. So to answer this question, we worked with these 3 temporal streams in the data, so child gesture, parent gesture, and parent naming. So first we look at how likely when parent name, there's also a gesture. So we found that in total, overall, 60% of the naming instances are paired with a type of gesture, and parents tend to gesture more than children. Right, so naming and gesture events are highly coupled in this particular context. And then we look at the temporal alignment between gesture and naming, and we found that child gesture tend to happen before naming. So we see there are a lot more instances that happen right before the naming onset, suggesting that it is possible that when parents see the child gestures, they label right after their child's gesture. And parent gesture tend to happen at naming, which also makes sense since parents is the agent that produce both type of cues. And then you may wonder how gesture influence child's attention during naming, because ultimately we care about whether the child can build the correct word object mappings. So we added child gaze stream to look at where the child is looking during naming events. So, so we plotted temporal profile of target look within a 10-second naming window. So in naming instances that are paired with child gestures, so the child started looking at target 1.5 seconds before naming. So this is really interesting because it's in line with how I showed you before, how gesture and naming were aligned, right? So which suggests that child gesture are really informative cues to direct the child's own attention to the named target. And then what about naming with parent gestures? So in this case, the child's proportion of target look tend to peak at 1.5 seconds after naming. So it means that it takes the child about 1.5 seconds to follow parent gesture and locate the correct named object. And then where there's no name, when there's a naming but no gesture, it's actually quite hard for the child to find correct named target. So all these 3 sets of results suggest that eye-hand coupling can really lead to coordinated joint switches in visual attention, which is really in line with previous studies showing that gesture play an important role in language learning and cognitive development. So I think our study is really interesting as it used a head-mounted eye tracking method to add new evidence to support this argument. Okay, so to conclude, I think understanding learning input is really interesting. It's really important. Learning input available to the learners is critical for studying any language mechanism, and head-mounted eye tracking method really allows us to quantify naturalistic statistical regularities embedded in social interactions and allow us to examine real-time behaviors that can influence learners' attention. So that's it, and thank you all for listening. And I want to thank everyone from my current lab and at the Max Planck Institute, and also my former lab in Indiana University, and also they recently moved to Texas, so everyone from there as well. All right, thanks.
Thank you. That's very exciting new type of use of eye tracking. I think we have time for a question. I'd love it if somebody from the audience wanted to raise their hand or just open your mic. I don't see any raised hands. I'm struggling with the clock and my curiosity about your research. I think Josh has a question.
Actually, yeah. I was wondering, looking at or listening to what Peto described and how he had the automatic, or they were working on it. It hasn't been developed thoroughly yet, but they were working on automatic computer-supported automatic recognition of gestures, and obviously it's still also being developed. And I remember that you mentioned that you still have to annotate things by hand. So do you see any chance of applying some sort of computational approach to recognizing some of what the gaze is looking at?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in my lab, actually, we so for some of the object like the object ROI coding, we already tried to use some computer vision algorithms such as like a ULAO to so we will have first have research assistant to code like to provide some training input like code objects and then train the computer algorithm to do object detection. So actually that's working pretty well, provided that we provide enough input and all the training and learning, and then the training and testing data are pretty consistent. We haven't looked at gesture coding, so hopefully maybe one day, yeah, that would be really helpful if we can somehow automatically code gestures as well. I think, yeah, hands maybe provide some annotations on hand gesture or like different type of manipulation, like hand orientation or shape, stuff like that. Maybe that would help.
Thank you very much once again. So we're going to move straight on to Irene Testini. You can share your slides right away.
Hello.
Hi, good. So Irene is digital humanities software developer at the University of Birmingham, and a research assistant and NLP specialist, and is affiliated with the Out of Our Minds research team, who are our partners in the MEDAL project. And the talk is called "What to Do with Lots of Language Data: Introducing Computational Models of Learning." Irene.
Thank you for the introduction. Can you see my slides okay?
Yes.
Okay, marvelous. So why do we care so much about using computational modeling? Traditional linguistic research has been focusing a lot on categories, and these categories tend to be limited in terms of the data that they're using. They're often very anecdotal, in the sense that linguists come up with a category that they think applies to certain structures, and then they use data that can fit or not fit that category. And then you get your psycholinguistics that then looks for evidence that is in line with those categories in actual human behavior. Computational approaches are a bit more rigorous in that they have explicit inputs and outputs, which is very important for actually understanding how learning is happening. But most importantly, computational approaches focus on having algorithms that mimic human behavior, but that are clear in terms of how the learning is happening. And that allows us to then analyze if those categories are actually applied during human learning. So how does that actually work? We usually start with some corpus analysis, And then we move on to some computer simulations. These computer simulations are based on hypotheses that we saw in the data from the corpus analysis. And we then run the simulation through a learning algorithm. And then we can corroborate those results using actual experiments such as eye tracking or classroom interventions. So yeah, just much like the law of gravity, the laws of learning are always in effect. So computational modeling is focused on how the learning is happening, and that's why we should be using it a bit more rigorously. I'm going to give you a quick example of how the Out of Our Minds project used this workflow to answer some linguistics questions. So one of the studies we ran was on aspect in Polish verbs. So aspect is grammatical category of verbs in Slavic that refers to some intervent temporal qualities of the verb. So the actual question was how if speakers of Polish choose the correct aspectual category for a verb, because the broader scope of the Out of Our Minds project is to understand better how second language acquisition works. The data that we used, so the corpus data that we used, was from the Iranian Polonicum. And the question was, can aspect be learned from exposure to context only without any need for abstract labels? This is because aspect is often being taught with some very strict rules, and students seem to struggle picking up the concept. And if it can be learned from exposure to context only, what types of contextual cues are informative and to what extent? So we looked at the Iranian Polonicum and we plotted the distribution of the tense and aspect combination. As you can see, it's mainly imperfective present. The present does not take perfective. And then there's perfective past and imperfective past are almost the same distribution. Imperfective future is not very frequent. So the real question here is there actually a choice when it comes to choosing the correct aspect for your verb in Polish? So what we did was we calculated the bias for each, for certain verbs that we had available. So this perfective bias was just a calculation to see which aspect each verb preferred. And as you can see here, most verbs actually tend to prefer one aspect or the other. So in this case, it's imperfective, and in this case, is perfective. So what does this tell us? It looks like the choice of aspect only represents an issue in the past forms, and that aspectual categories might be redundant in the future, and there is no choice in the present, which we already knew. So what did we do with this corpus data? We took our algorithm called NDL, which is naive discriminative learning. It's an algorithm of associative learning where a learning happens when cues are associated with an outcome. So when a cue appears with a certain outcome, there is a stronger association. When it doesn't appear with a certain outcome, there is a weaker association. It's naive in the sense that outcomes are independent, and it's an error correcting algorithm because the algorithm learns to correct itself when the truth value and the current state do not agree. And the learning events consist of input cues and outcomes. So in our case, our input cues were n-grams, so chunks of consecutive words, 1, 2, 3, or 4 consecutive words. Superlemmas, that we called superlemmas the two infinitive forms of verbs in Polish because they carry the aspect in the infinitive form as well, and putting them together into a superlemma actually just gives us the ground truth meaning of the verb without carrying the aspectual meaning. And then we also used tense as a cue. And then we run this NDL algorithm on 8 million sentences, so 8 million learning events. And what we found out was that the algorithm was capable of performing really well by simply using superlemmas and tenses. So again, what is this telling us? It's telling us that the algorithm, and maybe people as well, might not need those abstract categories to learn about, to choose the correct aspect. And it might be time to rethink how we think about linguistic categories and how we actually teach them to second learners. And so what it means specifically for aspects is that instead of continuing to offer aspectual pairs, rules, and contextual chunks, we can start focusing on tense and individual forms, as these two aspectual pairs seem to actually act like different words. And this is one of the approaches that we are taking so that we can put the learning back into the focus of these and all of our studies. Thank you. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. Everybody's raising clapped hands. I'll just ask, since we do have a few minutes now for questions. You've mentioned second language learning. I'm just wondering, and they're clear here, there's clear relevance. I'm just wondering whether you've tried to, transfer this into actual second language teaching practice, for instance, and what you found, or is that the next step?
It is the next step. It's an ongoing step at the moment. There are classroom intervention studies that are ongoing or might have just finished. I don't remember at what point if we're done or if they're still ongoing, but yeah. So we are trying to see what's happening. We did a similar study on in the English article system. And we also run some classroom intervention studies on that, and we're waiting to see what that's telling us about our results.
Caroline has her hand up.
Hi, thank you. That's really interesting stuff. So when my question is this: when I sort of do when I work with computational modelers where we're looking at how children acquire their first language, what I often find is that the most interesting results are when the model doesn't fit the human data, the children's data, because that tells you when the children, in my case, and I guess second language learners in your case, are not simply reproducing the statistics of the input or the distributional structure of the input, but are really sort of doing some work over that. So I guess my question to you is, in the models that you run, do you find, or do you have the capability to extract information which suggests the models are not fitting the human data in one particular area or whatever? And does that ever tell you anything interesting about what is actually happening in human learning?
It kind of just shows us what cues are being focused on by the algorithm. And in our case, it told us that the cues that the algorithm focuses on to get it right are not the cues that we are feeding the students. Okay. And that might be the reason why the students are failing. In other studies that Out of Our Minds have done, we found that the algorithm agreed with linguistic annotators, but then disagreed with naive speakers, which once again told us that maybe we are looking at it the wrong way around. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
If somebody has a burning question, we have another minute to ask questions of actually any of the three speakers if you want, because we've rushed through the first talks. And if we don't have any questions right now, then I think we will very sincerely thank the three of you for giving us these talks. Those were really great sort of examples and insights into the sorts of methods that we're going to be looking at in this project. And also what I liked was I saw threads picked up in one talk that sort of referred back to the previous one. It's there's obviously interdisciplinarity, and there's also obviously this awareness of how it translates into impact questions and relevance for language teaching and for interventions and so on. Anyway, thank you very much. So now I will share our medal project slides. One moment. And for the first work package that we'll be describing, I'm going to give the floor to Dogush Öksüz, who is a research fellow associated with our medal project at the Department of Modern Languages at Birmingham. He's going to be telling you about our plans for early career researcher empowerment within medal.
Yeah, thank you, Birve, for the introduction. So we run this work package at Birmingham, and I closely work with Dagmar Divyak and Peter Milin. Dagmar is the primary investigator of the work package. She is a professor of cognitive linguistics and language and cognition, and Peter is the co-investigator. He's professor of language learning. As Irene said, we're also a research group called Out of Our Minds, an apt description. Here we develop cognitively plausible ways of describing speakers' linguistic knowledge. And also maybe coincidentally, we use corpus analysis, experimental methods, and also computational modeling techniques. So within the framework of the work package, early career empowerment, we will create plenty of opportunities for postgraduate students and early career researchers to learn to implement cutting-edge methodologies with a particular focus on corpus linguistics, experimental designs, and computational modeling. So let me briefly talk about our work package, early career empowerment. Our main goal is to enable the transfer of methodological skills and advanced know-how among ECRs at the partner institutions. So we'll organize 3 annual flagship training schools, the summer schools. All these 3 events will be in person, and we will focus on each of these 3 methods. So this year in June, we'll be in Tartu for our Corpus Linguistic Summer Schools. And in June 2024, we'll be in Netherlands, in Nijmegen, for our summer school on experimental designs. And in 2025, this is the final year of the project, we will organize our summer school focusing on computational modeling. So the idea is that the current and future generations of language scientists will have diverse methodological skill sets, and therefore they will be better equipped to produce impactful research. So alongside the summer schools, we will also organize workshops focusing on specific methodological skills or analytical skills, such as eye tracking and naive discriminative learning models. Irene has just given an example, an excellent example of that. And also we will organize some workshops, and that will focus on a little bit more on transferable skills, such as academic writing, like high impact publishing in leading journals, and also open research practices. So, and also we will be doing some masterclass as well on topics like advanced statistical analysis, machine learnings, and we are planning to make these events hybrid so that we'll be able to open it up for participation beyond the partner institutions. So finally, I will talk about our mentoring program, where we'll pair early career researchers with senior researchers at partner institutions, so that early career researchers can get input and feedback on their research from from experienced researchers. So I'll stop there for now, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Dogush. I think we'll save the questions unless somebody has a really burning question to ask about this particular slide. We'll save time. We'll have some time at the end for questions and answers about the medal project overall. So right now, I'm just gonna go on to the next topic, which is mobility. Mobility is a big work package within the project, which supports a lot of the other activities. Right now I can't see the participants. So Asli Uhrig, professor at the Donders Institute of Brain, Cognition and Behavior and Center for Language Studies at Radboud University, and now currently director of the Multimodal Language Department of Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics. So she's at both the Nijmegen partners, is associated with this work package. I can't see.
Yeah, you can see me, right?
Now I can see you. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So
thank you. Yeah, thank you very for the introduction. So I'll just give a brief overview of the type of language research we have here at Radboud University. Even though I'm at the MPI now, but I'm representing the Radboud part of this consortium. Because of the Max Planck Institute in Nijmegen, we have a very rich tradition of researchers, language researchers, also at the university, specifically at the Donders Institute for Brain, Cognition and Behavior, as well as Center for Language Studies at the Humanities Department. We also have a strong emphasis here on multimodal language, not only at the MPI, but also at the university. We have Judith Holler. She's also she's also in our steering committee. She also looks at multimodal language from a dialogic perspective. We have people like Linda Drivers. She works on more brain analysis of multimodal language. And we have strong interest in studying sign languages as well as multimodal language. Also, we are really, I think, leading in the field of neurolinguistics. So, in experimental approaches, we have a lot of different imaging facilities on campus. And we also have facilities such as VR and all kinds of mobile motion tracking and eye tracking expertise here. So if we were to welcome you here, you will have access to these facilities as well. We also have a good linguistics department that people are doing a lot of cross-linguistic research, and conversational research is also very big focus in campus. So I think we are one of the most populated campus for language researchers. So we are very happy also to learn from you, especially from the computational aspect of things from this consortium and the Corpus Linguistics parts.
Excellent. And so that was an introduction to the partner at Radboud. And because the project manager hasn't yet begun at Radboud, we've been supporting the mobility side of the activities. And Josh Wilbur is going to introduce that. He is lecturer in digital linguistics here at the University of Tartu. Josh.
Yes, everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so as you can see from this screen, the mobility package is really sort of the glue that holds the consortium together in a very physical way. This is your opportunity to take advantage of the mobility funding that we have, so you can go to the other sites and to different events, the ones that Dogush just mentioned. So it facilitates the academic mobility. It takes care of these short-term mobility schemes for all the different consortium events that we've had, and even some other relevant international events. And another main goal of this is, wait, not quite that fast, Vera, is that by the end of the project, this is something we'll do later on, is to initiate Erasmus and Turing exchange agreements that don't currently exist, so that the mobility can extend beyond the 3 years of the METAL project itself. Okay, now you can switch. Just to briefly let you know which sort of target groups are out there, to know if you're eligible. We're looking at these early career researchers, so essentially PhD students and postdocs are definitely eligible. That's one of the main focuses of the project itself, and other academic staff as well. And specifically in Tartu, administrative staff and is eligible for mobility support as well. This is to be used for all the different METAL consortium events, such as the summer schools. The first one, of course, is happening this summer in June in Tartu. So if you're in Nijmegen or Birmingham and you're interested in coming to the summer school, then this is one way to help pay for your trip. For these mentoring visits that Dogush mentioned briefly, collaborative research, if you have some project that you want to work on and you need to actually physically be in the same space with the other person to work on it, this is one way to fund that sort of a visit. The administrative visits, again, this is for Tartu employees to go to our partner institutes and learn from their colleagues there. And the last year of the METAL project, we're going to have a final conference here in Tartu that will also help pay for your trip to come here again in December 2025. I think it'll be December. Right, and it also will provide opportunities to present at other conferences outside of the consortium when you're presenting METAL research. We're still working on the details. This is really important to set up as soon as possible, so the details will be out finalized in the very near future. There might be some small nuances that are different between the different institutes as far as who exactly can apply and what exactly will be covered, but what I just presented right now will be covered by everybody. So, yep. And we'll hear a little bit more about some of these other events in the next couple of slides.
I'm so sorry, I couldn't access my microphone. Thank you, Asli and Josh. The next topic is the dissemination and outreach component of the project, and Caroline Rowland will be presenting that. She is director of the Language Development Department at the Max Planck Institute and professor of First Language Acquisition at Radboud, representing both institutes. Caroline.
Thank you very much. So as I'm just turning to gallery view so I can see you all. So as I said, the Max Planck Institute is based in Nijmegen in the Netherlands. Because we're at the east of the Netherlands, it's actually quite hilly and we don't have canals, we have a river, but it's a very beautiful town, and therefore, I'm very pleased that the Max Planck decided to put an institute here entirely devoted to psycholinguistics. So we study how we produce and understand language and how we acquire language as a first or a second language. And our focus really is on psycholinguistics, so how minds and brains process language, how language interacts with other aspects of mind, and how multimodalities, sort of speech and gesture and sign, shape language and across diverse languages. So we're really pleased to be a partner in the METAL project. Our focus for the project is actually dissemination and outreach. So METAL will run events that you can go to, workshops, conferences, summer schools. METAL will run a mobility scheme that fund you to go to these events, and we here at MPI should be are responsible for making sure you know about all these opportunities over the next 3 years. So our goal is formally is to disseminate project activities and results, but also to showcase the University of Tartu, because one of the important parts of this project really is to support research in European. One of the important parts of this initiative by the European Union is to support research in European countries that have lower research capacity and visibility compared to their peers, and Estonia is one of these such countries. So we're also going to be showcasing research at Tartu as a research centre. So what we're going to do specifically is create a website and a social media presence. So you'll find a link later on in this presentation to our temporary website, which will hopefully in the next month or two be replaced by our permanent website, which we're working on creating with Ilonisas, that's a Netherlands-based website design company. Then we're going to run 2 open science workshops because open science is very, very important to us here in Nijmegen. And actually it's important to the science of linguistics as a whole. Okay. We also are in charge of running 3 popular science events. So something that we're also very keen here in Nijmegen on doing is encouraging children, school children, to go into linguistics, but also encouraging the general public to find out more about language and linguistics, because we think it's a fascinating topic. And then we'll also help run and publicize the big final conference in Tartu at the end of the project. So keep an eye out for all of these activities that will be coming in the next few months. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you, Caro. Yeah, so we've only been in operation so far for a month, and so of course the website and logo and all of that is yet to come. Okay, so our next topic is institutional capacity building, and my colleague here in Tartu, Lina Lindström, is going to talk about that. Lina is the professor of modern Estonian and head of the Institute of Estonian and General Linguistics here in Tartu. So, Lina.
Yeah, hello. So can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
So the whole project is actually for us how to learn from our partners, how to do better research, how to manage research better, and how to build our institution also better in doing research and managing the research. So the main aim of this work package called institutional capacity building is just about it. It's about managing research and making and thinking how we can be more successful in getting research funding and also in like being like more visible center of research. So what we plan to organize annual training workshops for our students as well as to staff, for example, on grant writing and maybe and research management, but also about research data management and ethics questions and so on. So currently we are collecting input from our colleagues and students in our institute, which kind of trainings we actually need, for example. So we also plan short institutional visits to our partners in order to learn how research management is organized in your institutions and what we can like demand from our grant offices and so on. Also, since our Center for Digital Humanities is a part of a project, we have to work out a plan, a medium-term plan and also long-term plan for our Digital Humanities Center. And therefore, also we would like to visit digital humanities centers in our institutions. And one task is also to develop our curricula here in Tartu, linguistic curriculum, but also maybe digital humanities curriculum. And we, at one point, of course, we learn from Meta project about how to do better research and what are these cutting edge methods, what we should teach to our students. But also we would like to one day to see your curricula and understand how they are built and what we should apply to also in our curriculum. And we have one plan is also to what we have to organize, which I have promised to organize, are roundtables with local stakeholders outside the academia in order to like make them thinking more about linguistics and what we need and what we need. So that's a plan. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so it's another big set of activities that's still in the planning stages. So like I mentioned before, the Twinnings instrument didn't used to have funding for, or initially didn't have funding for actual direct funding for research, but now we're very glad that it has. We can allocate a portion of the funding for an actual research work package, which we've called Gold Medal. Gold stands for Generalizing Over Language Data. And the bulk of that, according to twinning rules, is actually here at the University of Tartu. So the people who are involved with that, in addition to the people who've already spoken, here in Tartu are Berta Lippus, Pia Taremaa, Maria-Liisa Pilvik, Marie Aigro, Kaidi Lo, and Evalina Asu Garcia. And the plan, the aim of the research package is to actually implement the methods that we're talking about, that we're training, that we're developing expertise in across all the institutions, really, in specific research studies that are each one of which is cross-linguistic and cross-site. So they're developed in parallel at the different partners. And I think a really important component of that is that we're developing protocols that basically ensure replicability. That's sort of built into the design of these studies, because they're taking place in, they're going to be conducted in different languages in different places. But it's also part and parcel of best research practice in linguistics today. So that's part of it. And the other part is a real emphasis on early career researchers participating in these collaborative studies. So right now we have this core team working in Tartu and the other partners on this, but we're opening it up for PhD students and others to say, hey, one of these studies looks really interesting to me. How can I get involved? And as Caroline mentioned, open access is really important to us. So dissemination is going to be through open access publications. Just to give you a very schematic overview of what this is going to look like. So we've already talked about having these 3 years divided by corpus studies, experimental approaches, and computational modeling. We have distinct research programs with each of our partners, which hopefully will come together at certain points, but aren't going to be exactly aligned and in parallel. With Birmingham, we've got a focus on cognitive reality of morphosyntactic categories. We're planning a corpus study, cross-linguistic, of course, corpus study across the two sites, and then with the MPI, we have a focus on acquisition of morphosyntactic categories, and with Radboud, we have a focus on multimodal expression of linguistic categories, and each of these will have at least 2 of the methods sort of at the center of the studies. And so the basic outline is that the corpus study, the development of the corpus study, and then the results of the corpus study feed into the development of, the hypotheses and the design of an experiment that we run. And then based on both of those studies, or whichever one of those studies is done in each of these sub threads, that will feed into the computational modeling that sort of ties up the project at the end. So that is really a very schematic plan. At the conference at the end of the project, you'll hear how successful we were in each of these different sub threads. And we'll be making noise about the progress of these studies as well as it goes along. And I think there will be various aligned studies that aren't necessarily the main focal study. But yeah, like I said, if any of these topics seem interesting to PhD students or postdocs at the institutes, then please get in touch with us. Okay, and that brings me to how to get in touch with us or how to get involved with the MEDAL activities more generally. And our project manager here at the University of Tartu is Taavi Vanaveski, and he's going to tell you about this slide so that you can see his face as well. Taavi.
Hi.
I see you now.
Yes. So you can get involved by, first of all, joining the mailing list. So I added it just right now into the chat. And just sign up. There is also an extra field for giving us some input, some ideas, if you're signing up already. But in general, we hope for you, especially early career researchers, so postdocs and doctoral students, that you will come to our training events and the first summer school in Tartu also. And of course, we're going to try to do some online workshops. And if you are already interested or you have found your match in a partner institute, we can do this mobility funding for research and also for scientific mentoring. So in general, you should just get in contact with us and give us your input. What kind of trainings do you need? And just in general, like small things that help to make your life easier. For example, would you like to stay in a cheaper hotel or more expensive hotel, and so on and so on. Just give us feedback. And of course, during this program, you can also develop transferable skills. So for example, if you're coming to our summer school, we can give you like option to do oral presentation, poster presentation. So we are really trying to add to your CV. So please use this option and use our funding to improve your research and also achieve more in science. And of course, you can go to our current website through this link. And later on, as we update the website, you can still use this link to get to the new updated website. And so I'll remind you again in the chat, please sign to the mailing list. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Taavi. So you can sign up for the mailing list. You can write the contact people at your actual institutions, and you can write our general contact at Tartu at medal@ut.ee. And we'll be posting information when we actually have a full-scale website that'll be a better sort of locus of information and news. So that brings us to a close of the general overview. There are a couple questions that are already in the chat that I can read out right now, and maybe my partners and colleagues can help answer them. And if anyone has additional questions, you can also raise your hand on Zoom and then ask them orally. So we have one question that says, can I ask, is this exclusively for PhD students who are a part of each of the institutions, or can PhD students from other institutions also attend or apply for these things? I think the answer is that the mobility funding will only be for member institutions. I think a lot of the activities that we have, or the events that we have, will be open to people outside of the consortium as well. So certainly the online events will be open, like today's. The summer schools, I think, well, yeah, the summer schools, I think some of the events like plenaries are open to anyone who wants to attend. We're going to have to keep some of the workshops and smaller things actually limited to registered participants, because otherwise it'll just get too large for us. And so we'll only open that beyond our members if our places don't get full. Josh, did you want to say something at the microphone?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we're still developing the actual guidelines for who qualifies, and partly because we're 4 different institutes and we each have our own sort of structures academically. Even these are the details that we need to work out. What exactly is the institute? I know, for example, here in Tartu, we also have quite a few people studying linguistics topics in the school for or the College of Languages and Literatures.
It's an institute now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the question is, how exactly does something like that fit in? And the other institutes might have similar situations. We're still working on figuring out the actual details of being precisely defining who can qualify for mobility funding. If you're not at all affiliated with Birmingham or the Nijmegen Institutes or Tartu, then the funding's not intended for you.
You won't qualify for the funding, but you can attend some of the events that we organize.
Exactly.
And then another question that's in the chats is, as has already responded, I think. I'm wondering whether sign language research will be covered in the project.
So I think there was also a follow-up question. So, I mean, the team multimodality already involves sign language. So we will be focusing on speech gesture relations on the one hand, and of course, sign language is part of it. But it also depends what type of sign languages the researchers in each institute can contribute for. So the more sign language that you can contribute, we can cover it. So it's I see it as more like a bottom-up joint project. Mara, I believe, is in Birmingham, and Yayun is also in Birmingham, and we are currently working. We have people working on Turkish Sign Language and Italian Sign Language here. But we are open to all sign languages as long as there are people who are interested in working on them and can contribute to summer schools, etc.
I'll just add to that in the initial phase, the multimodal I don't know, thread or some sub project is looking at a few corpora that involve speech and gesture rather than sign language. But hopefully in the next phase there will be a sign language component. But that depends, yeah, like Asta said, entirely on who joins the project and what the capacity will be. Let's see. Okay. Are there any other questions, either on chat or within our institutions? You can feel free to open up your microphones and ask if there's anything. As you can see, we're sort of in the early phases and still working out all the details, like Josh said about the mobility criteria. We're still only designing the studies that we're going to be conducting. So we've been busy, and we look forward to actually getting going on all of this stuff. But if you want more details, if you're interested, then click Davi's the link that Davi shared that takes you to a place to sign up for our mailing list, and then you'll be kept abreast of all these details. Asli, there was a question about about which sign languages will be included, but yes. I think you did answer that by saying that depends on who joins the project. If there's actually, whether there's actually going to be research on sign language, yes.
And we would be very happy to work with the Morph Sign project that's already going on at Birmingham. So we're happy to join forces with them from the corpus perspectives or some other emerging sign language aspect, and just bring it on and contact me, and then we'll see how we can make it a bigger topic.
And Maria-Lise in our institute has written a question, and no, you did not miss this information. We didn't say when summer school is taking place. Thank you for the question, because that is a question that we can actually answer. We'll be sending out an announcement for the summer school fairly soon for anybody who's on our mailing list or in the member institutions. The summer school is taking place in Tartu from the 19th to the 23rd of June. And as Estonians know, the 23rd is heading into the midsummer holiday. And so it's a really beautiful time to be in Estonia. I really recommend all of you who qualify to apply for funding and come. It's an entire week of corpus linguistics in Tartu, Estonia. What could be a better way to start your summer? I really think it's going to be a fantastic week. I sound facetious, but I'm not. It's going to be great. So definitely apply for funding for that, and we'll have a lot more details about the schedule, actual speakers, the actual topics of workshops, and so on, as soon as we possibly can. But anyway, within the next during the month of February, we'll put out a call for that. Anybody want to add to that? Oops, Dogush, I think you wrote the wrong dates.
Yep.
It's not 19 to 14. I'm traveling back in time. Thank you.
I included Saturday as well, if in case they were keen, but I forgot about the public holiday in Estonia.
Yeah. 19 to 23. The 23rd will be a half
we will
day.
definitely put together an excellent lineup of speakers, and also we will also have plenty of information about the recruitment of students for the summer school. So expect to hear us in the next few weeks.
So I think if we don't have any more questions, I don't see more questions in the chat. I don't see, oops, I'm going to stop sharing. And I can see better. I can see all of you better, but I don't see any raised hands. So thank you all for coming. It's really it's very gratifying to see so many people having joined. It's really exciting to be starting off this project. Thank you again to the speakers who joined us for this. And I hope to see all of you in person in Tartu at some point, or maybe online at various events that we'll be holding. And have a good evening. Bye.